Our guest is Emera Purton. She's a bronze medalist at the JJIF Jiujitsu World Championship 2022 in Abu Dhabi, representing Team Canada, but bringing back that world bronze medal to her home gym here in Ottawa Jiu-Jitsu. How are you doing, Emera?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Obviously, I'm curious to hear about your experience at the World Championships, of course. But before we get into that, I want to know your jiu-jitsu story. If you could tell us what got you into training and competing and all that. So let's ask you, what's your jiu-jitsu story?
My jiu-jitsu story started as a mom. I definitely felt like I was missing being an athlete, and I had a friend come and she started trying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and sort of fell in love with it. And she convinced me that it was something I needed to try. So I gave it a go. It took me years though. It took me years, about 5 years to make that call, but I don't know why it stuck. It stuck. And I finally made the call and I stepped into one of Brandon Keel's classes, and I was immediately hooked. It was something that fit into my schedule, something that allowed me to work things out on the mat, process my life, move my body. That's how I started.
Right on. And I'm curious to know your friend that encouraged you to get into jiu-jitsu. Is this person still active in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I think she's active, not as much. It's definitely not her main thing these days. It was for a little while. But she's still in the community, and she's still very supportive of my jiu-jitsu journey.
Right on. Now, over the years, what has this sport continuously taught you about yourself? You just give us kind of, what got you into the sport, but you're still training, you're still competing, and I'm sure it's an interesting process for you. What has this sport taught you about yourself and your development as a competitor?
It's been really surprising, because it's the reason I continue training is not why I started. I feel like it's brought me back to who I was. As a little girl, I was feisty. I fought for what I thought was right. And somewhere along the way, I strayed and things happened. And jiu-jitsu has really brought me back to that. It's given me strength. It's given me confidence. And when I say confidence, I mean not just confidence in front of people, not just the confidence to stand up and give a presentation or talk to a large group of people. The confidence to set boundaries, the confidence to advocate for myself, my kids, the confidence to have uncomfortable conversations when they need to happen. It's seeped into every part of me, and it's been really surprising and really enjoyable to see myself just like thrive through jiu-jitsu.
So how long have you been involved in the sport, would you say? You started, you said 5 years. It took you 5 years to get into it. So how long has it been since you hit the mats?
It's been about 5.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. Now, speak to us on your evolution as a grappler from when you started to where you are today. How would you describe that evolution from the first day you trained to where you are now as a purple belt and a bronze medalist at the Worlds, which is incredible?
Thank you. How has it evolved? How have I evolved? I mean, when I first stepped on the mats, I was in a room full of white belts who were all bigger, stronger men of varying degrees. Every once in a while, a couple times a week, some of the girls would come in to train, but I was there every day, twice a day. So the majority of my classes were with bigger, stronger men who were still white belts. So when I say that, I mean inexperienced, using a lot of strength, ego-driven. And it was a journey in the beginning of like staying safe and also just physically exhausting, and feeling like I need to just get through this. I need to just get through this. I know at some point it's going to be fun, but right now I need to just get through this and get better and trust the process. And I think somewhere in my blue belt, it started to be fun. I started to see myself be able to control other people, to use what they like, whatever aggression or strength they were bringing to me. Although 6 months in, I experienced, sorry, in the house. About 6 months in, I was able to submit like a 240-pound football player who came in day one, knew nothing.
Wow.
And that was a really powerful experience. Now, he didn't bring any kind of extra aggression to it, but he was trying. And that was a really profound experience. And since then, I mean, there's like levels to this. So I learned how to stay safe. I learned the confidence to stay safe. And then it became like, how do I beat people who are really good at jiu-jitsu now? So then it became like honing these skills on levels. And it's just like this onion where you learn jiu-jitsu and then you realize you know nothing, and you learn it again. And then you're like, I know nothing and I need to fill in all these holes. And it just, because you go up in the ranks, and yeah, it's been quite interesting.
How did you submit that football player? What hold did you choke him out? What was it? Armbar?
It was a triangle, which is
Nice.
using my strongest parts against his weakest parts.
What was this person's reaction? Were they like, how did they react?
He was very respectful, and he was just like, I don't even know what just happened.
Oh, nice.
He still talks about it, actually.
Nice. Right on,
Yeah.
right on. Now, follow up to that question for you is, what would you tell your former self, like the beginner, if you could go back and give her advice, in her early days, training in this sport, from her future self? What sort of advice would you give your former self?
Yeah. This has been something that I've been thinking about a lot this year. And I think the advice that I would give is the best way to stay safe is to accept losing. And injuries, because the fastest way to getting better, the fastest way to a black belt is no injuries, which is almost impossible in sports in general. But one injury, everything except for one injury was 100% my own fault, even if it was also someone else's fault. I could have prevented it by just accepting the situation, by not worrying about what belt I am, what belt they are. So yeah, just leave. It's weird. You don't think you have an ego, but pretty much all of us do. Leave it at the door for real and accept the loss.
What if we could dive into that in terms of your motivation to compete? What drives you to competition? Oh, I think my screen is frozen. Oh no, I'm back now. What motivates you to compete, and what drives you to get there?
Well, the first competition I did was about 3 months in. Let's see, 3-4 months in, and it was extremely uncomfortable. It made sense for me to compete. You practice and then there's game day. So it was like competition is game day. However, you're all alone on those mats. You aren't really, your team is there, but it's just me, which I really liked actually on one level because I wasn't relying on anybody else. But the nerves were so intense. And initially, it was really fun to go and see how much better I could do against girls that were my size and my level. I didn't get to experience too much of that in training at the beginning. But then also, it was so uncomfortable that I was like, I need to do this as much as I can to just normalize it. And reduce this anxiety. I still get nerves, but I've learned that like as soon as they say combat, as soon as they say go, it all goes away and I'm completely in the moment. And it's been really fun to see how like the ability to truly be present is so useful. But yeah, it's also been really profound to see how the lessons of jiu-jitsu and the impacts in my personal life are really intensified by competing, because you're exposed so quickly to the holes and you are forced to face yourself. You're forced to face discomfort, and then you get to fail, you get to succeed, you get to beat people that are bigger than you. And you get to experience that, which is, I think, where confidence comes from, is literally experiencing success.
You have a background in other competitive sports, because I get the vibe that you're just a natural competitor, or you're a competitive person. I get that vibe. Do you have a background in some other sports?
Yeah, I played university soccer.
Which university? Sorry, which university?
Rock University.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there for a year and I played soccer. I played soccer my whole life, amongst other sports, but soccer was the one. And I was always very competitive. I'm a good sport, but I'm very competitive. I try to win everything I do. Yeah.
What position, if you don't mind me asking, what position were you playing?
Mostly striker. I've played sweeper and center mid, but mostly striker. I like to play with.
Right, you have that background, in competitive soccer. You played at the university level, as you said, and I'm assuming that there's a lot of transferable skills. Even though you mentioned that, obviously before a tournament you get anxious, you're nervous. I think that's very normal, right? We all do if we're going to be fighting or competing. But I'm sure, as someone who's been involved in sports for a long time, as you just said, right? You played a variety of sports growing up. You have that muscle memory and also that potentially that mindset of competition. And in terms of competition, what role does competition and competing play in furthering your approach to understanding the sport? Because you spoke about, you use the concept of the onion and how you're always relearning and you're going through the process. Can you break that down for us, the role of competition?
Yeah, so my first competition, the first match I had in a jiu-jitsu competition, I got on the mats and the ref says go. And in soccer, the ref says go, you have to pass the ball to your own player. And it's like a slow start almost, even when it's fast, it's slow. And so I look at my coach, Brandon, and I look at the screen and the girl just like mauls me over. It was a very spazzy fight, but Brandon was just like, why are you looking anywhere except for in front of you? And that was probably the first lesson I learned in jiu-jitsu, truly, was pay attention to what's in front of you. But it was a very different kind of sport, a very different kind of competition. But the thing that it does is it gives me something to work towards. It shows me what I need to work on. Different competitions have different rule sets, and even gi versus no gi provides a different challenge. And some people take that and sort of focus on one and go with it. I'll just use them to like round out my game. So whatever I'm preparing for, I've been a guard player for a long time, and I've often pulled guard, not as much at purple, but blue, I pulled guard a lot. And lately I'm preparing for some competitions that penalize that. So my stand-up has like exponentially grown. That's just what I'm focusing on. So I think that's mainly the role, is it helps me improve. I always feel like, as well, competition is sort of like 3 weeks of training. Like, even if I'm not ready, even if I'm not feeling great, sometimes I'll use a competition to get back into it.
Going back to your first match, that opponent that you fought, Have you fought this person? Have you fought her again?
No, I haven't, which is weird because she was, I mean, we were both white belts, but she had been training for a while and like very into it. I think she might have moved to MMA. I'm not sure, but I haven't seen her since. And at the time, competitions were illegal in Ontario. So we all had to sign a waiver saying we knew we could get arrested if we did this.
That's awesome. Hey, if you could use like say 3 characteristics to describe your gi game in jiu-jitsu, how would you describe it? Well, what keywords or characteristics would you use to describe your fighting style?
Technical. 3 words.
You got 2 more.
I want to say because which I feel like is technical, but I like to make it pretty.
So finesse, like stylistic, like just impeccable jiu-jitsu. What's that? 3 words? Yeah.
The more perfect, the prettier it is, the more effortless it looks.
Wow.
And then also dominant. I like to dominate.
Interesting. And how do you, just to follow up for that, is that something, give us a scenario, and we're going to talk about your competition soon, but give us a scenario as to how do you keep yourself from remaining technical, working on being dominant, but being sophisticated in your approach. How do you keep yourself in that state? Because I'm sure sometimes it might be easier to just, I hate to say it, maybe to use power, use strength, and so on. So how do you keep it? Because obviously in competition, you're fighting people in your weight division, and that's the under 63 kilo division. So how do you remain constant with those 3 keywords you've just mentioned there?
Yeah, so competition obviously always helps me be dominant. Everything gets tighter as you compete. You can tell when someone just competed. They come back to the training room and their jiu-jitsu's tight. They're being aggressive. They're like not letting you get an inch. So competition helps that. But aside from that, in the training room, it's the people you train with. So the way I drill is what keeps me technical and stylish. I try to be, I understand details when I see them. I'm very visually able to learn that way. And I try to drill perfectly. Every time I drill, I try to drill perfectly and fully understand what I'm doing. And then when I'm training and doing more live training, training with guys or people who, generally men, are just stronger and able to do things with strength to me. So I have to be perfect. But it also allows me to fearlessly use aggression. And I think one of the benefits of not only training with women is learning how to be aggressive, which for me, I did need to learn how to do on some level. And then also when I train with bigger, stronger people, I have to be perfect. And when I train with people who I'm better than and I am not going to be physically overpowered by, I get to, in a live sense, try to be perfect.
Very interesting. Just a few minutes ago, you were talking about different rule sets for gi and no gi, and you mentioned that you're going to be competing in a particular style that favors. Correct me. I think I'm paraphrasing here. Hopefully, I'm paraphrasing right. Favors some takedowns. Or which style is that? Is that wrestling or?
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing the ADCC Open, which penalizes guard pulling for a portion of it.
Okay.
And then the Canadian Nationals with Ada Mansour, which also penalizes guard pulling. So it's not that you can't, but you'll lose points, or the other person gets points. I'm not sure how they do it, but that is incentivizing me to just do a lot more stand-up.
Interesting. Well, when are these tournaments happening?
March and April, I believe. So they're
Oh,
coming
wow.
up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Very interesting. Speaking of competition, now, of course, you won the bronze medal in the under 63 kilo division at the JJIF's Jiu-Jitsu World Championships 2022 in Abu Dhabi. Congratulations. That is incredible, man. That's amazing. And I want to know, there's a lot to ask about this particular chapter here. And I'll just let you lead us through the entire experience and what you took from it. Initially, what were you thinking when you heard about the World Championships? Where you're like, I'm going to show up, I'm going to go there. Well, how did that unravel? How did the opportunity unravel?
Honestly, it was all just meant to be because I didn't plan any of it. I won the provincials at Purple, which got me free entry to the nationals. And, they called me and they're like, you get free entry. And I was like, all right, well, I wasn't planning to do it, but it's free entry. So the only thing usually that keeps me from competing is financial, is money, because I just want to always compete. It makes me better. So it was in Toronto, so I had to go up there to do it. I was really sick when it happened. But the interesting thing about the nationals and the JJIF Worlds is it's not a belt tournament. It's just, so here to qualify, it's purple and up in a particular weight division. So I just went because I was excited to fight brown and black belts, which I did. And I managed to, it was a 3-person division and I got second. I got to beat a brown belt to get there, which, respect to her, but it was also really fun to do that. And I was like, cool. And then the organizers came up and they're like, so you qualify for Team Canada, being it's only 1 and 2 they qualify, gold and silver. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? So the only thing that happens is second place, you have to pay your way. And I was like, I can't afford it. And they're like, well, get fundraising. And I was like, okay, it's worth a try, right? So I started fundraising. I got a GoFundMe going. I sold the Emera jersey and it happened. The community came through, which was in its own way, like it made me feel like people believed in me, which was a very, very touching experience. Brandon put me through a training camp like he's never put me through before, not just physically, but the jujitsu. Like I honed the game. I don't usually prepare for competitions in this way. I say I'm always ready and I do the best I can and I do quite well because I do a lot. But this time I honed a game and I had a game plan, and the preparation really came through because I got there. There was like an old schedule that told me I was going to be at the end of the week, and that's what I booked my flights for. I got there and I still had to lose, I think, 1 kilo. Not a big deal, but I thought I had like 4 days to do it. Turns out I had 1 day to do it. Wow. And I was fighting in 2 days. So, and the time difference is like, I think 12 hours or something ridiculous. So I get there and I'm exhausted. It's like a 20-hour trek. And I learned this on the spot. Like I didn't even know before I got there. So whatever, we trained, I lost the kilo, weighed in, did that. The day I competed was probably my worst day in terms of jet lag. Wow. And I don't say that to be like, I could have done better. I don't even know if I could have. But the thing is, I was so well prepared. My coach prepared me so well that it just worked. I was like sleeping outside of the mats. And then when they called me in, I went and I nailed it. I did everything I wanted to do. I lost 1 match, which put me in the group to fight for bronze.
Right.
I won my first, lost my second. And yeah, it it was a judgment call. I was winning it, and then she was able to sub me, but I still felt really good at the end because I was exhausted, and I still had so much fight in me, and I had such a good game plan that I just like ran through everyone else. It was a very good experience. Preparation really, really matters.
So, you know, I want to ask a bit more about it. There's a few things I think we need to talk about in terms of the training camp. But before we do, if you don't mind, lead us through round number one. You fought against an opponent from France. How did you beat this opponent? If you could break it down for us.
Yeah, so all of the European girls seem to have a really good judo base, which is different than I'm used to. A lot of girls here have like very intricate, or if you go to IBJJF, they have very intricate guards, especially at my weight. These girls were strong and aggressive and very like forward. So they initially had like really good grips on me. I pulled guard very quickly. I think with France, I pulled guard very quickly. Yeah, and then I ended up getting her back, sweeping her. We had to stop the match at one point because I wasn't given the sweep points. And my coach, Fernando, like for Team Canada, he advocated, got me those points. And I was able to sweep her, pass her guard, take her back, and I went on points with her. And then
you move on to round number two against the German Jiu-Jitsuka. How was that?
That was really good. She surprised me and she jumped guard, but I prepared for it. So I was able to immediately intercept, stand up, pass her guard. I got 5 points on her, I think, before she turtled and attacked my foot, and she got a really tight toe hold on me, which was frustrating because I'll fight through a toe hold usually. But it destroyed my ankle. It popped several times, and I could not get out of it. And I'd missed a sprawl, and my coach had told me to sprawl, and I'd missed it because I'm not used to. I'm a purple belt. I'm really new, even in a lot of actually all the gi competitions that are IBJJF based, which is pretty much all of them locally, we're still not allowed to do toe holds. So I'm in like this division with, you know, everything's legal, which is so fun. So yeah, I wasn't used to it. I didn't defend it well enough, and she was able to get a toe hold on me.
That's interesting because I mean, your first opponent was from France. The second one was from Germany. Both countries have really strong, you know, jiu-jitsu, and I'm talking like JJIF jiu-jitsu, IBJJF jiu-jitsu, and incredible judo as well. From there, you move on to round number 3 against an opponent from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. How was that? How was this opponent? What do you recall from this match?
I think I fought someone from Colombia, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
okay.
It was Colombia and then Korea, and those 2 matches were easy. I pulled guard very quickly, got my legs around in a triangle, so I got a diamond frame. She kept her posture for a bit, but I just sort of patiently waited, broke her posture, submitted her with an armbar from the triangle. And then Korea was my last match, and I was asleep in the pen waiting to go on. But Fernando was like, you need to bring home some hardware to your team. You need to lay everything you have on the mats. And I was already ready. I came to Abu Dhabi ready to destroy people. And I know that sounds really violent, but I was in fight mode. I was ready. And I don't usually feel that way. I was ready. So I was like, yeah, I'm here for it. Like, I know I was just sleeping, but I'm ready. So I got on, I did my thing, I pulled guard, I got a triangle, and she stepped over me, and I was like, oh no. I'm about to get like passed. And I don't know, I turned, I stood up, she kind of had a Kimura on me. I did the lazy arm out of it and jumped on her back, and we both fell over. I heard everybody yell. It was like kind of a dramatic moment, jumping on her, and I got a rear naked choke and I choked her out, and it was pretty quick.
Wow, this is with the Korean round number 4, right?
Yeah.
For the bronze medal.
Yeah.
Incredible. And sorry, I was looking at these the website, and I thought it was the Saudi Arabian, but you're right. Obviously, you were there. It's the Colombian that you fought. And this is very interesting because you essentially fought France, Germany, Colombia, South Korea, and in the end, you got the bronze medal. But when I look at the top 3 here, I'm trying to find it here. I think you fought against the German who got the silver. A Canadian got first.
Yeah, Janine.
Right. So overall, and I think there were 13 competitors in your division, and you're in the under 63 kilo. How tall are you? You're like what, 5'10", 5'9" and a half?
I'm 5'8".
5'8". Okay. Well, wow. I thought it's interesting because you seem taller, but were you the tallest in that group, would you say?
No, I would say, I don't know, maybe I was. France and Germany didn't feel much shorter than me, if at all. Yeah.
In terms of what, sorry, go ahead.
I felt like they were bigger than me overall.
In terms of, because you obviously saw a lot of jiu-jitsu, while you were there in your matches and in between your matches, I would imagine. What was your overall impression of the female competitors in your division? How would you describe them? You mentioned France and Germany had a very strong judo game, a grip game, a throwing game, etc. Very forward moving, as you described them. What else can you tell? What else did you take away in terms of observing other countries and different competitors, their style and their characteristics?
I feel like this carried through all of the competition, but it felt like everyone was there to win. And I know that seems obvious, but it's the only competition I've gone to where everyone was there to win, and people were getting paid by their countries to be there. So yeah, everyone felt like they were ready to lay everything out, and people were breaking their bodies in ways that I was even shocked to see, especially the UAE teammates. And they're sponsored, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but it was like you really had to beat people. And those girls were highly competitive. They were doing all the Euros, all the Abu Dhabi competitions. They were really experienced with these really big competitions. So I felt a little bit like an underdog in a lot of ways.
You're not an underdog. You made the podium. You got the bronze medal. I think it speaks more. And I'm sorry to interrupt. I think clearly, obviously, your skills and your capabilities showed up that day, and you represented, right? But I think it might speak to more on the sports development side. But when you look at jiu-jitsu in Canada in terms of its ability to get organized and to send athletes there, you know what I mean? And that whole sponsorship and all these other things, because I think, as you mentioned, like UAE, the tournament is in their country, right? So they get unlimited, they can send in an unlimited amount of competitors for each division. And I believe they had 120 competitors, UAE did. Kazakhstan sent 159 competitors. Greece sent 137. Brazil only sent 10. The US only sent 6. And Canada, surprisingly, sent 29, which is incredible. for Canadian Jiu-Jitsu, considering, you know, in the Americas here, Brazil, our neighbors way in the south only send 10 and they're a Jiu-Jitsu powerhouse, and the US only send 6. But out of 74 countries competing with a total of 1,635 competitors, this is a major international tournament. And I think, what did it mean for you to compete there and, you know, make the podium? Because from what you've described, you said, you know, you're saying everyone who showed up, you know, wanted to win. They were there for business, and you know, you made the podium. Tell us, well, what did it mean for you in your career?
It was very validating. I mean, I've obviously chosen to make my life around jiu-jitsu. But it felt very professional. The tournament was run really, really well. It was crazy to be in there with all the lights and be among. I mean, I was right next to people, ladies and men, but ladies that I look up to. You know, really, really high level competitive women in these divisions. It was nuts. And the Canadian women overall did really, really well. I was told that the Canadian women do well, but I had never been one of those, so I wasn't sure. But the Canadian women are really, really good compared to the rest of the world. So it was really cool to go and see that and feel it and realize that my jiu-jitsu stands up and the jiu-jitsu I've learned stands up. Yeah, it gave me a lot more trust in I trust Brandon, I always have, but not just his jiu-jitsu, but I realized that he designed a camp for me as well. And I was like, this man is ready for a lot more high level athletes under him. He just hasn't had any, but he's ready.
Tell us about this training camp, because you mentioned, you know, he designed this training camp for you. Break it down for us, and like, what was it about this training camp that it sounds like it was a pressure cooker of training? Break it down. What did you guys do?
I'm not sure I can. I just had to show up. He would probably be able to break it down better than I could, because I just showed up to it and saw the results of it. And by the end, I felt really prepared. I did get to test myself at a different tournament, pretty high level tournament here locally, with my sort of newfound honed game. And I ran through the division and the absolutes, but I just showed up. And there was, like, I will say, it was less about learning new things and more about the live scenarios. So we had us do a lot more. In jiu-jitsu, it's quite normal to do live scenarios where you start in a guard and person on top has to pass, person on the bottom has to sweep or submit. But he broke it down a lot more and created different scenarios that involved active stalling on the top or the bottom, playing very specifically to the point. So he'd give us a scenario where we're down by 2 points, or, you know, and there's 30 seconds left on the clock. He put me through some Shark Tanks with some very specific goals. But yeah, I just showed up. And I mean, I can't always show up. You're a parent, I know that. So you get it. Sometimes things just happen. I can't always show up when I need to. Right. But yeah, I just showed up and he told me what to do.
Tell us about him, your coach. How is he as a coach and competitor? For anyone who doesn't know him or whatever, if you were to describe this guy, how would you describe him? And his jiu-jitsu. How would you describe in terms of his coaching approach, etc.?
Yeah, Brandon is obsessed with jiu-jitsu. He's been doing martial arts his whole life. It started when he was really young with his dad, who is I think it's called Wei Chi Ru. yeah, okay. He's a Wei-Chi-Ru black belt. And they're nuts. They do throws on hardwood floors and body
Wow.
conditioning. It's a whole other level. But his first like 8 to 10 years were of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu were with Shane Rice, who is Canada's only Hickson Gracie black belt. And I won't go too much into his story, but
Right.
you know, he trained with him. He trained with Marcelo Garcia. But I've trained at other gyms at this point in my journey. Good gyms that have competitors going internationally and sponsored. And the more I learned jiu-jitsu, the more I realized that Brandon's fundamentals are basically the best I've ever seen. They match up with because I've also been to seminars with like Guy Mendez and Tana Delpra and Damian Maya, and the fundamental stuff that they teach, like to a T, is what I've learned from Brandon. And it's all based on, you know, he's also been an MMA fighter. So at the beginning, I mean, we were learning a lot of sport jiu-jitsu from the perspective of stay on top, be first. And I was like, but how do I do self-defense? Like, what happens if someone's trying to hit me or something? And he's like, just trust the process. You'll figure it out. Don't worry. He's not highly communicative, but he does know what he's doing. And, you know, lo and behold, years in, I understand what grips are about. I understand that I know how to grip people and also how to manage other people's grips. And that's the first point of connection. I've had scenarios, I've had live, like real life scenarios where I've had to manage aggression against me. And I've realized that I am very, very well prepared to keep myself safe and avoid a hit from someone who has no idea how to throw a punch properly. It's well telegraphed. It's easy to get to someone's back. It's really, really easy to deal with people that don't know any jiu-jitsu or any kind of fighting. Yeah, I don't know. That was supposed to be about Brandon, but yeah, his fundamentals are incredible and everything goes back to that, you know?
Right. And I'm curious to know overall, as you're developing as a competitor, you know, and you keep on competing, and it sounds like you've mentioned the role of just tournaments and how important they are for competitors, obviously, like yourself, right? You've got two big ones coming up, two big tournaments coming up in the next couple of weeks, really. What else do you do as a busy person in it, you know, in terms of training outside of jiu-jitsu? Are there other sort of things you do for, you know, if it's mental training, if it's, you know, cardio, like what else do you do to augment your game that you can tell us?
I have just started lifting again. I lift on and off. But what I've done most consistently is yoga. And it's not incredibly consistent, but I try to do that at least, you know, 4 times a week. Yeah, I do yoga and I train as much as possible. I train jiu-jitsu as much as possible.
Right on. And if we could go back just before, in terms of, you spoke about the fundraising to send you abroad to Abu Dhabi. How was that experience overall? How much time did you have from finding out that, hey, you've qualified for the Worlds to actually going there? How much time did you have to fundraise? And how important is sponsorship overall? And do you have any sponsors? Do you want to tell us who your sponsors are?
Yeah, I am sponsored by the Hot Sauce Company. They make hot sauce and they're based out of London, Ontario. Really good people. So they've been really, really supportive, both in sponsoring me and just donating. outside of the sponsorship. And I think I had about 6 months maybe from the time that I qualified to when we had to leave. So it took me a couple months to kind of figure it out, and I started the GoFundMe, and it looked like I was getting some donations, but it I don't know, it just kept getting shared.
That's great. No, that's awesome. And if I could please follow, sorry, go ahead.
People gave some very generous donations.
Right on. And in terms of that outreach that's involved for like, say, media and so on, how much was any of that done before or after for the team? Like, because there were 29 competitors in the whole. I guess what I'm asking is how much media promotion and outreach was done for Canadian athletes? Because I've come across an article. But beyond that, was there much that was done?
I'm not sure what article you're talking about. I know that after the fact, I think like an MP made a post.
Okay.
There was very little.
There was an article published on InsideTheGame.biz by Elliot Brennan. They cover a lot of the amateur international sports, combat sports, obviously, but everything from weightlifting to darts. They do all sorts of great work, but I don't know if you're familiar with them. They've written an article there, but so there wasn't a lot of in terms of media. Okay.
No, there definitely could be more of a presence for this. I think even just spreading the word about qualifying. Like, I'm very involved in the jiu-jitsu community,
right?
And I didn't even know that this was a qualifier.
Wow. You mean the national tournament?
Yeah.
You mean they didn't that was not communicated to participants who made?
It might have been. You go into Smooth Comp where we register for competitions. On the comp page, it might have been in some of the print there, but it wasn't in any way advertised. It wasn't. Yeah, it was like you would have to go and look to find that out. Right, so the only people who are really attending the tournament are local.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Jiu-jitsu for Canada.
Oh, it's extremely popular. Like, I think it's probably the most popular grappling sport, at both recreational and competitive level. It seems like, in Ottawa, there's so many jiu-jitsu gyms. It's insane. Like, compared to like all these other styles, it's interesting to observe. But quick question about JJIF experience and the tournament there, because the JJIF tournaments have different styles. They have obviously jiu-jitsu, what we know, or some people might call it niwaza, but it's jiu-jitsu. Then you've got the fighting system. Then you've got the mixed kata system and whatnot. Did you see any of those other competition streams? And if so, what were your opinion of them?
I saw a little bit of the I'm not even sure what to call it. I think it was like point fighting. And I also don't know what to call it, but it was like choreographed.
The kata,
that was really cool. And I got to see them warm up too, which was really, really impressive. It's like fighting gymnastics.
Right.
That was really impressive. And yeah, it was just cool to see all these different styles come together and be, I think point fighting was just brought back here in Ontario. I'm not sure, but there's just so few kind of ways to elevate and continue competing at higher and higher levels in martial arts, other than UFC and mixed martial arts. It was cool.
Yeah, the fighting system I've seen. I've been to the Worlds once years ago as Well, I think I'm frozen. Oh wow, can you see me? Oh yeah, okay,
Yeah,
no,
no,
I'm not
you're
frozen.
back.
Anyways, no, it's really it's fascinating. The fighting system or that stream is very dynamic because you're right. It's point fighting on the stand up. It's very dynamic and explosive. I mean, you can't knock the person out with a punch. It's controlled, but there's kicks involved and lots of incredible transitions for throws to the ground.
Yeah.
So and from there, of course, it's jujitsu. So it's it's very similar to almost like combat sambo, and it's very entertaining, I find. There were 74 countries represented there, and as I mentioned before, 1,635 competitors. How cool was it to be at such a major international tournament with all these different countries, cultures, languages, and coaching styles and so on. What did you take away from that experience? Have you ever experienced anything like that with so many different, a diversity of humanity?
No, I've been to Pans in, Florida, but no, that was like me and a bunch of Americans. Um, it was really, really cool. And it was so well run. It was so well run. But yeah, I was on the mats next to every other country, and you could see all the countries, labels on the wall. There's no real division. People were helping each other warm up. Yeah, I felt like it was my birthday
Wow.
every day. It was just it was such a cool experience.
Has it changed your perspective of the sport of jiu-jitsu in terms of competition or just jiu-jitsu in general?
I don't know if it's changed my perspective on jiu-jitsu, but it made me want to do it again. Like, not just I compete all the time. I love competing, but I was like, I have to come back. I have to do another JJIF. I have to go to Worlds. I have to do more of these big competitions. I don't know how, but I have to. It is a different level. It's a different experience. And people there are in it just like I am. And not only that, but connecting with the other Canadians, because we're all from different gyms. And sometimes the jiu-jitsu community can be a bit divided. And it was really, really fun to connect with them and be teammates. And we really were teammates there. And I got to train with them. That was really fun too. I got to train with these other high level, all in practitioners. And we got to train at the hotel. So the hotel was hosting a bunch of us. Like, everyone at the hotel, as far as I could tell, was there for the Worlds. And we all had our different sections in the restaurant and whatnot, but they had a whole like conference room set up with mats. And so we were training with other countries, like this girl from Colombia asked me to train with her. And it was really, really cool to just go and train with the other countries, even after I had finished competing. So yeah, it was and I got to know my fellow Canadian jiu-jitsu practitioners way better. It was really cool.
Right on. It sounds like a really positive experience overall. Obviously, curious to know. Moving on now to different set of questions. What's the Ottawa Jiu-Jitsu story? Tell us about the dojo.
I think it's always been a dream of Brandon's, forever to have a school. I always wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to work with kids. I wanted to be a gym teacher. And then I found jiu-jitsu, and it all kind of just came together. I also studied conflict studies and human rights in school. And it's a bit vague, but I feel like everything I learned there is really coming into play here. So it was, Brandon and I connected as friends, obviously more than that now, but right away. And it became obvious that eventually our team, which I was one of the leading people on, was going to eventually need our own space. We were operating out of other people's gyms for a while, but like always our own team. There was the people that trained under Brandon, and then the people that trained generally. And then COVID hit, the gym we were at closed. We weren't able to go in even to do Zoom classes, and our income disappeared. And it was like we started doing basement jiu-jitsu and saving up, and it was almost out of a need. Like it wasn't when we had planned to do it. It was like, we have to open a gym or the team won't have anywhere to train. And I don't know how we did it. My family came through, and we found a spot that was closing, a gym that was closing forever. And we opened our gym. And the location we're at has been a martial arts gym, I think, for like 20 years now.
Right.
So we sort of took over that space and, worked on our logo. I wrote up business plans. I applied for funding and investment, and we figured it out and we got it. And then we found our fish, which came out of the group chat. We have this group chat called Ground Karate Party. And one day the group chat icon became a fish, and we just all started pressing the fish. And there's people come into the chat and they're like, what's the deal with the fish? And we're like, you'll figure it out.
That's awesome. That is really cool. I remember when I first saw the fish, I'm like, I was trying to think. I'm like, I was trying to assess. I'm like, fish. Well, why is there a fish? Is this because usually the fish, at least, like it's associated to Christianity, right? Like Jesus and the fish, like some symbols of that. I'm like, okay, that's cool. All right, whatever, And then I'm like, is it a religious gym? Is it? But no, that's sorry.
Church. A lot of people say, let's go to church when they go to train jiu-jitsu. Right.
It's part of a particular lifestyle. Now, about the gym, tell us why do people train there? What keeps people training at the gym? What do they enjoy about training at Ottawa Jiu-Jitsu?
Two things. We have the best jiu-jitsu. We have the best product. I'm obviously biased, but so far we have the best product. Brandon is obsessed with educating and improving himself, so he's always making it better. And then the community. We have the best community. We have the best training room. We don't need a women's program, although we have in the past had a women's program, which almost felt unfair to the guys because we just got extra comp training and they didn't. And instead of doing that, we just have a room where everyone's safe and everyone's part of the same community, and we all get to train with different kinds of bodies and different people, and everyone has to learn how to do that. So yeah, community and the jiu-jitsu.
Right on. It looks like I'm still frozen, but I'm not. I don't know, it doesn't matter. I don't know. Oh, you can see me now. Okay. Yeah, because for a second I was like,
yeah.
Anyways, Emera, what's your approach to teaching jiu-jitsu? Because you mentioned, you've always wanted to be a teacher, a phys ed teacher as well, and you studied conflict studies and human rights. And it's interesting because a lot of these martial arts, a lot of their values are used to, be it jiu-jitsu or judo or whatever, to unite people and to, find a resolution to problems and so on and so forth. But what is your approach to teaching the sport? Because you describe yourself as someone who's very technical. You value stylistic, sophisticated jiu-jitsu that's not using strength, it's using technique, leverage, and dominance. How would you describe yourself as a jiu-jitsu teacher?
right now I run the little kids program, so the younger group. Um, and it's been interesting to see how I fill that role actually. With the adults, my approach is always trying to, because people come with different inclinations, and it's always really interesting to find a way to bring them to like thrive. That's how I always see it. It's not just jujitsu. Um, so people will come, and obviously we're trying to teach them how to be effective, but that means different things. So some people, like myself, to be effective, I needed to learn how to impose myself. Other people need to learn how to like dial it back and gain some self-control and be present in the moment. So sometimes I'm telling people to just breathe. That's the only thing I feel like they need to focus on. And other people, I'm telling them to impose themselves. So it's like identifying what those individual needs and goals are, and also how to bring that out. I have a friend who recently decided she was going to compete, and it totally changed how she was training. And she suddenly started becoming a lot more effective. But yeah, and then with the kids, I'm just really trying to, kids are so easy to teach jujitsu to. They just naturally already know how to do it, it seems. So it's like finding the games that teach them the movements, teaching them how to listen and focus and interact with their peers. You know, I've seen I've seen kids come where they can't seem to figure out how to express how much they like each other, and evolve into like cooperative teammates. But yeah, it's been really rewarding.
Very cool. I'm curious to know, going back to the community at the dojo, pardon me, Ottawa Jiu-Jitsu. In terms of the culture and so on, how would you describe the culture? How do you know what I'm saying? Because every gym has a different vibe, a different energy, right? And so on. So the organizational culture of a gym says a lot about the people there and the sort of competitors that they become. So a two-part question here. How would you describe, the culture at the gym? You mentioned it's a very safe spot, safe place. And what do you look for in beginners? And I ask that because whenever, you go into something new as a beginner, if it's martial arts, if it's an arts class, if it's fill in the blank, it could be whatever, right? You go in with a certain, and you kind of answered it there before, a certain mentality, a certain expectation. And if you have no background in any combat sports or martial arts, maybe you're intimidated, right? Maybe you're, you know what I mean? You're scared. You're probably going to get beat up or injured. Some people still think that about martial arts the first time around, right? It can be a hostile environment. Maybe not. I don't know. So two-part question, how would you describe the community in terms of its culture at Ottawa Jiu-Jitsu? And a follow-up to that is, what do you look for in beginners when they're starting for? What characteristics?
The culture I would describe as really hardworking, but we're all there to have fun. Nobody is going to keep doing something that isn't fun. And we definitely want people to keep doing this forever. So we're really hardworking. We all absolutely love jujitsu. So something I find interesting is you go to gyms and they don't know, like the student body doesn't know who Rickson Gracie is. They don't know the origins of their sport. We tend to teach that just sort of naturally, but we tend to teach that. We do a lot of team building activities. We get together, watch UFC. We have Christmas parties. A lot of gyms do that, but we tend to incorporate a lot more information and education around the sport so that people kind of understand why and where it came from. So yeah, we just have a room of very passionate, very kind people, because the other thing too is we have a gym where if you don't want to do something that you're asked to do, you don't have to do it. You can say no to anything, you know. Nobody's the boss of you, really. You're all adults. And I find a lot of times like that's not always assumed, especially in a martial art where there's like a sensei or a master or whatever. Brandon's just another human. He knows more jujitsu than us, but that's it. We're all adults and nobody actually gets to order us around. We just choose to do what he says because we trust him and we trust his knowledge. And I'm not sure why, but that makes a difference in the culture. So yeah. I don't know if I answered the question, but
yeah, you did. You did answer it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what do I look for in a beginner? I look for somebody who wants to be there. And someone who is willing to be bad at something. So you'll see, inevitably, you'll see people who struggle to suck and struggle to lose. But ultimately, they, like anyone who sticks around, is willing to be bad at it and willing to just take the time to learn that new language. Yeah.
Now, who would you say is the most influential person, coach, or training partner in your overall development as a grappler?
I mean, Brandon. I've definitely had moments of being influenced by people, and there's people who have inspired me in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But in a very holistic way, Brandon has been the most influential and believed in me way before I did, and knew everything, you know, about me before I did.
I have a follow-up to that, but I think I'll skip to the next question. What has been the most challenging hurdle in your overall appreciation of the sport journey and process that is jiu-jitsu? Because I would imagine it's continuously evolving, right? Just like everything else, over time, you gain more insight. So,
the most challenging hurdle is that I actually am fully responsible for my improvement and my ability to get better. My learn. I'm fully responsible for it. Brandon's there with the information, but I'm 100% responsible for my body and my strength and not getting injured and letting go of my ego so I can keep getting better. Like, I don't get better if I'm just always trying to win in the gym. And I already said this, but that's been a challenge. And I'm not, you know, I don't think other people would even describe me as somebody with a bad ego. Like I said, I am a very good sport, but just in my own body, you know, holding on to things, because I'm like, I have a triangle, but you know, a big guy can stack me and it hurts my neck because I'm not that strong, and that's like my weakest part of my body, and I should probably just let it go and try again. That's been a challenge.
I bet. I mean, it's you know, as you are a competitor, right? A natural competitor, and you know, you want to win, obviously. So that totally makes sense. Last question for you here: what keeps you on the mats, training and teaching?
Like, I feel like I can't function unless I do it, but to go deeper, it's the community. I was just talking to one of my teammates about this yesterday. Why am I still doing this? I can keep myself safe. I can beat a lot of people who are good at jiu-jitsu. I'm pretty good at jujitsu. Why am I still doing this? And, you know, I just love it. I love getting to go to the gym and control bigger, stronger people. I love looking like me and being able to do that and surprising people. And I love watching other people evolve through jiu-jitsu because they're all like, I see earlier versions of myself. And it's really fun to see the way jiu-jitsu helps people thrive. It's really, really cool. And I just want to watch that forever.
Very cool. Quick follow-up. Do you document this stuff? Do you write, do you have a dojo diary, not a dojo diary, but like, do you have a jiu-jitsu sort of diary or journal? What do you do to document moments that mean more than just, you know, choking someone out via triangle choke or arm bar or what have you? How else do you express jiu-jitsu beyond the fighting or the grappling?
I do journal sometimes. It's not a regular thing, but I definitely do journal and document things for myself. And then when I'm inspired, I tend to write a post about something on my Instagram. And some of them are long, and I don't know if anybody reads them, but I do it, and I like it.
Right on. Well, congratulations again on you know, getting that making it to the podium at the Worlds, you know, which is incredible, and all the best in all your future tournaments and jiu-jitsu career. So thank you very much. And where can people, obviously, where can people find out more about you and the gym, if you want to plug any social media?
Yeah, why not? At Ottawa Jiu-Jitsu on Instagram and Facebook. I am Emera BJJ on Instagram, and physically, I'm pretty much always at Ottawa Jiu-Jitsu in Hintonburg.
Hintonburg.
Yes.
Right on. All right. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.